Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Everything is Bad New Fangled Motion Picture Show.
Welcome one and all to another episode of the Everything is Bad Newfangled Motion Picture Show. I'm your host, Niall.
And I'm Nolan.
And today we're going to be reviewing the latest in A24 or A24? A24's
A24.
just bizarro freaking movies. The Green Knight. So before we get too far into it, I will say that we're going to do a spoiler-free review, and then we'll give you a spoiler warning, and we'll go more in-depth into it after that. So, without further ado.
The Green Knight.
Or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Axe.
Yeah. So, for those of you who aren't aware, The Green Knight is an epic poem, right? There was like an Irish legend that got kind of co-opted into the Arthurian legend.
I believe so. I'm gonna look that up. But anyway, yeah, it was not like the part of the original like battery of Arthurian tales.
Right, but
Danish. This is a Danish fairy tale.
Oh. Anyway, yeah, it follows Gawain, who's Arthur's nephew or something. Anyway, yeah.
No, I don't think this is it. I don't think this is the same thing. Anyway,
what can I say about The Green Knight?
It's very much an A24 film.
Yeah, so while
if you know, you know.
While it is competently made and the cinematography is beautiful and the acting is great, I can't really recommend the film to most people. It's kind of bizarre. It's a kind of a slow plotting film, which isn't always a bad thing. But it just kind of is. I don't know what to say about it. It's I've seen it described as being anticlimactic, which I would agree with.
Yep. Yeah, so I don't real quick. I don't know what that other The Green Knight was that was popping up as a Danish thing. So it is a medieval romance, rhyming romance. We know of it through a single surviving manuscript that was almost destroyed in a fire. That much I do know about it. And
well, there's that trailer that told all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
Too.
And so it basically parallels the tale of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which is specifically about King Arthur's nephew, but this story of the Green Knight seems to be like co-opted into Arthurian legend.
Yeah, this movie in a lot of ways it feels like a Terry Gilliam movie. Just the way it was edited and shot just sort of has that feel to it a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not a bad movie in that if you look at it as far as like what makes a movie bad, it doesn't have the elements of that except that it's just not super entertaining.
So like each act of the movie has what we presume to be like a chapter title or something from the original story, and tells like, a chunk of the story that's more or less its own standalone short story. So it's like almost kind of like a bunch of short stories that have the same main character, and in each of them he's on his way to go face the Green Knight, sort of.
Right.
So, I mean, like you're saying, like, other than that, it's just kind of boring. Like, it has all the the things that you normally look for in defining a good movie. It has good acting, good costuming, good sets, like beautiful landscapes throughout. It's just slow paced and like frankly pretty boring, and in some spots super bizarre.
Yeah. There's people out there that are kind of being pretentious about the movie, like, well, you just don't understand it. I'm like, there's not really a whole lot to understand. It's not real deep. It's just kind of weird.
Yeah. And and the reason I say like each chunks feels like its own short story is because there's like some real non sequitur like chunks of story in there where it's just like, and then he finds a house in the woods, okay, or and then he finds this, and I don't want to get too much into spoilers, but it's just like out of nowhere he encounters this thing, like it's just,
Yeah.
and then he like deals with it, and then moves on, and that thing is never brought up again. And there doesn't seem to be anything relating back to a lot of this stuff. Ultimately.
Right.
So, which it would also play into the idea of, or it's also explained by that this, was a medieval tale, which typically would be like a bunch of short stories that a writer has collected and sort of put together into one long piece of literature. And like Beowulf was that way, right?
Yeah.
Same thing. So it sort of makes sense in that way, but it's just like I haven't read The Green Knight, but it feels like this was probably just a pretty faithful adaptation, which just is not how we tell stories here 500 years after the collection was that's what I'm looking for. Brought together. Collated.
Compiled.
Compiled. I said collated. I think that still works.
Yeah, I guess so.
But anyway. Yeah, so
there's also nothing to really if you do really want to see it, there's nothing about it that really screams big screen.
No.
Like if you want to see it, if you're on the fence, maybe wait till it's on a streaming service.
Yeah, like there's no big epic battles or like battles with giant monsters and stuff, which is kind of disappointing for something that's part of Arthurian legend, frankly.
Yeah, I don't know what I expect because I'm not familiar with the story to begin with. I knew of it, but I didn't know what was going on
right
in it. I just knew it was part of the Arthurian stuff. And yeah, I don't know what I expected, but the movie wasn't quite that. I knew from like just judging from the trailers that there was going to be some strange
like dark fantasy
elements. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think I particularly liked the movie.
No.
So you want to get into the spoiler?
Yeah, so henceforth there'll be spoilers.
Yeah.
I will say that this movie had a lot more of male ejaculate than I expected to see.
Like actually see
in a movie theater.
Not like a scene you're like, oh yeah, that guy had an orgasm, but no, it like
pans down and it's all over his hand and like soaked into this belt thing.
Yeah.
This magic belt.
Yeah, so he has this magic. His mother is a witch.
So
right? And she gives him this magic belt supposed to protect him from harm, but he gets robbed by some bandits and it's stolen. Later in the movie, he comes across this manor house with Joel Edgerton living there, and there's this woman there that he kind of is attracted to, and she sort of I think she's just trying to tease him. I don't think she's trying to seduce him, but she's just trying to like, kind of like she wants
Mess
to
with him?
humiliate him
Yeah.
in a way. And so she gets him to, all over his hand. And but she also has, I don't know if it's supposed to be the same belt. She says it's not, that she made it, but it's an identical belt.
Right. So, okay, so one of the very first... So, let's set this up. So, it's Christmas, and Sir Gawain is invited to dine with the king and the queen, as they are credited as, and they never come out and say it's Arthur.
I'm curious if they did that because, well, no one owns the rights to Arthur, so that's not
right.
the reason. So maybe they did that because they didn't want people to, like, focusing on them. Like, well, I want to know the Arthur stuff.
Maybe.
I
mean, the trailer is actually like the trailer explaining all that stuff about the Green Knight does specifically mention is Gawain's relationship to Arthur and Merlin and all that. So
yeah, but it's Arthur,
right?
Anyway,
so he's invited to dine with the king, and the king invites him up to sit by his side because the king mentions his son is off on a quest for over a year now and has not returned. And while they're dining, Gawain's mother is like performing some spell. Unclear what her motive in all this was.
I think she wants Gawain to be greater than he is.
So,
because he's kind of a layabout.
So this is sort of after all, like Arthur has united the Saxons, and like
Arthur's an old man.
He's an old man. Him and his round table have already done all of their deeds and their adventures.
Right.
And so, but Gawain is a young man, and he hasn't had an opportunity for glory.
Right.
And honor.
He spends all his time with this prostitute that's like his girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah. And so his mother is performing this magic ritual, summons the Green Knight, seems to summon the Green Knight, although the Green Knight seems to also be an entity on his own. Like,
yeah, well, but they do this ritual, and they write this letter, and then they seal it with this green wax, and then the letter disappears, and then the Green Knight brings the letter to the court.
Right. And so he's a tree man, and he's big. He's like 8 feet tall. He's got a big ol' axe. And he shows up, and it basically is like, hey, it's Christmas. Join me in this game. One of your knights here challenged me to a fight. And whatever he does to me will be returned to them in a year's time. In the meantime, they get my axe, which is really badass and whatever. I mean, I'm paraphrasing.
Right.
So like,
Gawain's the only one who volunteers.
Right, because again, the rest of the court are old men. Like,
yeah.
all the knights of the Round Table are old men at this point.
So Arthur loans him Excalibur.
And the Green Knight just sort of puts his axe down and kneels on the ground.
And Gawain, who's
too dumb for his own good, apparently,
chops the Green Knight's head off. So the Green Knight's like, all right, meet me at the...
He stands up and picks his head up off the ground.
Right. And he says, meet me 1 year's time on Christmas...
At the Green Chapel.
At the Green Chapel. Which is 6 days ride north of here or whatever, he says.
Yeah.
So Gawain kind of like forgets about it until Arthur comes like a week before Christmas, or more than a week or something. He's like, you got to go do this.
Yeah. Go do this thing and come back and tell me if he's there or not. I'm kind of curious.
Right. So he rides off. Before he leaves, though, his mother gives him this magic belt that would protect him from harm. And
yeah,
then,
while he wears the belt, no blow may fell him or whatever.
Right. So he his first day out, he gets accosted by these bandits. That one of them steals the axe.
Oh, he's also given an anointed shield. So he's given the belt by his mother and the shield by the church.
Yeah.
And like we don't even get to see him do anything with the shield. The shield gets destroyed.
Yeah, these bandages break the shield right away. Steal the axe. They leave his sword, but they steal his clothes, or some of his clothes, and they tie him up, and they take the belt. So he gets away, he gets to his sword, cuts his bonds, but leaves his sword behind for whatever reason. Oh, they took his horse.
Yep.
And he goes wandering through the woods until he comes across this house that's haunted.
And this is the start of the like self-contained bits of story that seem to have nothing to do with anything
Right,
going
so that
on.
yeah, when you say that's the end of one story. Then the next chapter, he gets to this house, and it's haunted by this girl, and she wants him to find her head in the pond outside.
Yeah. She says she was killed by a man, and then her head tossed in the pond in front of the house.
So he brings her skull back to her body, and the axe is there, right? That's where.
Right. Yeah. He turns around after returning her skull. He like turns around and sees the axe.
Yeah.
And that's the end of that story.
Right. Anyway, he's wandering. It's like raining the whole time, and it's
Yeah. So he like
really rough.
he ends up with this fox following him. And like he encounters some giants at one point.
You think they might have been a hallucination? Because at one point he eats these mushrooms, and then he like throws them up and falls over and starts shivering.
Yeah.
And then he gets up and walks along with the fox, and there's some giants and stuff. So that might all have been in his head.
Right. And then he encounters Joel Edgerton's house, right?
Yeah.
After that.
Yeah. So he's there for a few days.
And Joel Edgerton's like, "Don't worry, we know who you are." Because, oh yeah, also for like a whole year, bards have been telling the tale of Sir Gawain and his encounter with the Green Knight on Christmas.
Right.
So like the whole countryside knows who he is, and so yeah, Joel Edgerton, who's the Lord, is like, "Yeah, you can stay here. I'll hunt. I'll go out in the day and hunt, and I'm gonna leave you alone with my wife,
Daughter?
sister."
I don't know.
Uncertain, with this hot chick that I'm apparently responsible for, and
this blind old woman.
this creepy blind old woman
who just never says a word, but is just like there in the corner all the time.
Yeah, and doesn't seem to have any real impact on the story.
Yeah,
at all. And so like he spends the days like talking with her, and then the nights talking with Joel Edgerton, and like they talk about like morality of man and like honor and like why you would even care, and like
chivalry and night stuff.
Yeah, night things. And like on the last day, he sees she's wearing this belt that looks a lot like the belt his mom made for him, and she like seduces him and is like saying like, "Oh, do you want it? I need to hear you tell me you want it." And he's like, "I want it." And then like
they're dry humping each other.
And then like eventually she stops and she like laughs and goes, "You are no knight." And the camera like cuts, and you just see he's holding the belt with his hand covered in specimen. I don't know how much we're allowed to say on YouTube without it getting age flagged.
Right. That's
so
gotta self-censor, but yeah, there it is, and I'm like, huh.
Yeah, and the dude next to me in the theater just lost it at that point because it's really just out of nowhere scene.
Right, I was just like, oh, gross. And I can't repeat what the guy next to me said.
Yeah, so and then he like gets freaked out, grabs his stuff, and runs off. And Joel Edgerton kisses him on the mouth.
Yeah, he comes across him after he killed like the biggest boar.
Right.
Like, I mean, this thing's bigger than a horse.
Yeah, like it's laying on its side, and its shoulders come up to Dev Patel's chest. It's a massive boar.
Yeah.
So, and then he like runs off. And
oh yeah, Joel Edgerton had the fox in a sack though.
Oh yeah, Joel Edgerton had the fox in a sack, and he lets the fox go, and the fox continues to follow Gawain.
Mm-hmm.
And like they they come to a river with a boat, and the fox starts talking to him, and is like, "Don't go that way. Just go home. You don't know how. If you knew what this thing was, you would not continue." And he's like, "I gotta do it. It's honor."
Right.
And he shows up, and apparently he's a day early.
Yeah, so he sits there until actually Christmas Day. Then the Green Knight, because he's just sitting on his throne thing, and he wakes up. He's like, "Oh, well, Merry Christmas."
He's like, "You actually showed up?"
Yeah, and so he's like, "Well, I got to do to you what you did to me." And he's like, got the axe. He picks up the axe, but every time he's about to take a swing, Gawain's like, "No, wait, hold on, I'm not ready." Right, and he eventually like runs out of there. He like runs away like a coward.
Goes back home.
Becomes king
because apparently Arthur's son like never returned.
Arthur dies. He becomes king. Winds up fighting a war. Oh, he impregnates his prostitute girlfriend.
Keeps the bastard,
but and just like tosses money at her and boots her out. Then he gets married to some nobility, presumably. Fights a war, loses the war, and he's sitting there on his throne as the enemy's battering down the doors, and he's got that green belt that is
the bastard dies.
Oh yeah,
in the war.
Because it's like years later. He's an adult fighting, and he dies. And so he takes off that belt that is supposed to protect him, and then his head falls off. And then you're cut back, and he's still in the Green Chapel with the Green Knight.
Like it was all a vision.
It was like all a vision of what was to come. And so he takes off that belt that's supposed to protect him and says, "Okay, now I'm ready." And the Green Knight just takes his finger and runs it along his neck and says, "Well, there you go." And I guess it was all just like a test of courage.
I guess.
And honor, because it would be cheating to leave the belt on and then get your
right. Yeah,
which tells me he didn't believe in the belt's power anyway.
Right.
Because he ran away and he was all.
Yeah. So and then roll credits, and we were sitting there, and I was like, that was the second most A24 movie I've ever seen.
The first being The Lighthouse.
Yes. That movie had mermaid sex organs.
Yes, it did.
So, yeah, it was just a bizarre movie from start to finish. I kept waiting for when is this going to be interesting?
Yeah. The most interesting part was the part with the haunted house, I think.
I think the most interesting part was the beginning, up until the Green Knight shows up and they have that whole encounter at the very beginning. I think that was the most interesting part. But yeah, it's so bizarre, man.
Yeah, we left out a lot of just random stuff that we can't really. Without just getting into the nitty gritty, describing every scene. There's a lot of just strange scenes.
A lot of which aren't even really important to the story anyway. So whatever.
Right, there's after he gets robbed, it does this weird pan around, the camera rotates around the forest. You see it getting greener and greener and greener, and it stops on him after a 360, and he's a skeleton. Then it goes back the other direction, and there he is alive.
Yeah.
What was the point of that? Plus, there are a lot of really drawn out scenes that I'm like, are you just panning the runtime here?
Oh yeah, when he's leaving the city at the town around Arthur's castle at the beginning, and he's just walking along, not saying a freaking word, and we're just like, we get it.
It's a long way, right? It just keeps going.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So. Anyway, I don't think I could actually really recommend this movie, if I'm being perfectly honest.
Yeah, I don't think I could either.
So, next movie that we're gonna see is The Suicide Squad, which looks much better than Suicide Squad.
Well, we have another video coming out before then.
Oh yeah. Jungle Cruise. We also got a review. So yeah, that should be our next video, and then the next movie that we're gonna see though. So the video after Jungle Cruise will be the Suicide Squad, and then we've got Free Guy, the Protege, I believe is everything in August. Oh, are we gonna see Respect? Pretty Oscar baity.
Yeah, I mean it's probably a good movie. I figure if Mom wants to see it or something, we can go.
Yep. And then next month we've got Shang-Chi, which I'm super excited for. And I would expect to see that we'll see a Spider-Man trailer when that happens. And the Venom sequel is also in September, which we're gonna go see. I don't know how excited I am for it.
Yeah, I don't
know. And then in October we finally get No Time to Die. And Dune, and The French Dispatch, according to IMDb here, which still have no clue what it's about, but it's Wes Anderson, and the cast is absolutely stacked. So, yeah, we're gonna go see it, right? I mean, it doesn't really matter what it's about at this point.
Right.
If you haven't seen the posters for it, I mean, Timothée Chalamet, which I don't think we really don't have reference on how good of an actor he is, but
just judging by the trailers, he looks like he's pretty good. Trailer for Dune.
For Dune, yeah. Owen Wilson, Bill Murray, Lee Schreiber, Tilda Swinton, Benicio del Toro, Christoph Waltz, Willem Dafoe. It's like, all the usual suspects that want to work with Wes Anderson. And it's just like it's just a whole bunch of really big name actors involved. So, and it'll be flawlessly, every scene will be flawlessly framed.
Yeah.
So, what was the last Wes Anderson movie? Was it Isle of Dogs?
I think it was Isle of Dogs. That was before the Grand Budapest Hotel, right? Or after? I mean.
After? Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
And there's also the new Jackass movie, which I don't know that we'll bother reviewing that. We're probably going to see it, but I don't know that we're going to bother reviewing it, because, like, it's not like there's going to be a plot or, what are we going to say about it,
Yeah.
But there's also this Ron's Gone Wrong, which neither of us had any idea about until we saw the trailer when we went to see Jungle Cruise.
Which one was that?
That was that animated movie with the kid who gets the robot.
Oh yeah,
friend.
Yeah.
And I watching it, I was just like, for something that's very clearly a kids movie, this is some pretty serious like cyberpunk themes going on, involving like AI and self-awareness and stuff like that.
Yeah, it actually looked pretty good.
So we'll probably end up seeing that. That's what we got coming up through October. So if any of that sounds of interest to you, come back by and check that out. And yeah, you got anything to add to that?
No.
All right. So until next time, thanks for listening.
Bye.
Toodles.